got my head in the clouds and my feet on the ground. I got big dreams. Gonna make a
Hey, this is Coach Toby in the Genius Lab, where we help you realize your greatness. Today is episode 4 of Claiming Your Power, based on my new book, Release Your Shit and Reclaim Your Power. So today, in our last episode, we talked about shit that was not your fault. And of course, everybody was really happy on that one because, who wants to get blamed for stuff, right? Well, I'm afraid today is shit that is your fault. Okay? Because let's just say some shit is your fault. Okay? Let's get to it. So the first thing that's your fault are your choices. Okay? We all make good choices in our life and we all make bad choices in our life. And, the deal is we get the benefits of the good choices and we get the backlash from the bad choices. And, that's just part of life. It's, I don't know anyone that's ever made all good choices in their life. I know people that make more good choices than bad choices. My life has been just the opposite. I mostly have made really bad choices, but I've had a lot of fun. So were they bad choices? I'm not really sure. So anyway, so let's talk about that a little bit. Consequences of our choices are the things that we reap the benefits of or receive the punishment for. Okay. Some people call it karma, some, cause and effect, whatever you want to do it. It doesn't really matter. The bottom line is you make a choice and you get the result of that choice. The cool thing is when you begin to live more consciously, you can make better choices so your results end up getting better. And then you can dig yourself out of the pit that you got into making the bad decisions. So sometimes you make good decisions for a while and then you get into a situation where you then start making bad decisions. So my favorite story about this is I was in Portland, Oregon. I worked for Nordstrom in Seattle and I got recruited by a company and got my dream job. Now, I made a lot of really good decisions as a buyer for Nordstrom that got me a certain amount of visibility that got me recruited by this company. And but then once I got in that company, I made a lot of good decisions too. I was one of the top salesmen. And eventually worked my way into vice president of sales. And then I started making some really bad choices because I loved business. I loved making a bunch of money. I loved being visible. And I loved cocaine. And once that love affair started, it was a downward spiral, and it did not take very long to destroy the whole thing being my life. I always did really well at work. I mean, I could go without sleeping and just, do a couple lines in the morning and ready for action. But the thing is that it's accumulative, right? So you get by with that, and then pretty soon things start to fall apart. And bottom line is when we sold our company to Paul Fireman from Reebok International, my friends were buying new Porsches and leasing jets, and I was paying off drug dealers. So it sucked. They were very bad decisions. And, it's just the way it is sometimes. But if we look at the choices we make and we look at the choices that we've made that have been helpful and that are leading us towards our desired outcome, and then we look at the choices that we make that completely fuck us over, it's like, duh, wake up. It requires conscious attention. And it's really not that hard. It's not hard to make good decisions. It's actually really freaking easy because you just look at what gets you where you want to go. One of the things that is a factor in this, though, is your level of self-esteem. When you don't feel good about yourself, when you feel like you're a piece of shit and things are going good, you don't feel like you deserve it. So you start making bad choices that lead you away from your desired outcome because you don't feel like you deserve it. One of the things that we work with here in the Genius Lab is working on core values, core beliefs, goals, mission, and worldview. So that when you begin to make decisions, when you have choices that you make, they're made on behalf of your core values, which you bring into consciousness. Everybody I meet, I ask, so what are your core values? What do you live by? What's your code? They look at me like I've got two heads. But it's really important. And, one of my core values is caring. If I don't care about something, I don't do it because it's a waste of time otherwise. Passion is important. That's another core value. Financial stability and thriving and abundance is important to me. So when I make decisions that are going to support that. Fun is another core value of mine. I want to be happy and I want to be having fun when I'm doing it. I have friends that are in certain jobs and they make a ton of money, but they fucking hate their life and they hate their job and they hate what they have to do to make the money. That wouldn't work for me because that's not in alignment with my core values. So when we think about this, we make good choices to a certain point and then we hit the ceiling. We hit the place where our self-esteem gets challenged. We have two options. Number one, we can stay at a low self-esteem and this is all unconscious, which makes it so tricky to navigate. We don't realize that we think we're a piece of shit. We actually think that we're all kumbaya and we want to, we are the world, we are the children, we're going to make a difference in the world. But the fact that when we begin to reap the rewards of our good choices and then we self-sabotage, that is a wake-up call that guess what? Your actions are not in alignment with your core values, and your core values are not in alignment with the level of self-esteem. So there's some work to do, which is why we have to release our shit and then reclaim our power so that we can raise that bar. So, I have some funny stories, and it's great that I had a really fucked up time in my life during certain aspects of it because it gives me a lot of material for this work that I'm doing now. But one of the things is when I was in high school, I was a professional musician, and I had a religious experience. I had a born again Jesus experience, and nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing, and I'm just laughing at myself and how I handled the whole thing. But one of my friend's mothers convinced me that playing nightclubs and bars was serving the devil with a gift that God had given me. So the band came to a point where we ended up breaking up, and rather than getting into another secular band, my best friend was going to a Bible school down in California. So I packed up my car, headed down to California, and decided I was going to be a rock and roller for Jesus. Got into a couple of bands, toured the United States and Canada, was going to save the world for Jesus. And it was really funny because for 8 years, I participated in this through school, or I guess it was 6 years, 6 or 8 years. I don't remember exactly. Some of it's a blur and some of it is intentionally forgotten. But basically, I saw during those times, especially when I was in seminary and I was doing my studying, I realized after a couple of years that I was fighting with more people than I had ever fought with in my life. And I'm like, I thought this was supposed to be kind and loving and kumbaya and stuff. But one of the things we were studying was theology. And the thing that I came to realize, especially after studying church history for a few years, I actually wrote a huge paper on it, is that the worst enemy of Christians were other Christians. And there's these theological divides. It's kind of like where we're at in our country right now, where if you're a Democrat, you don't hang around with Republicans and vice versa. It's like huge divisiveness. So you have all these theological issues, original sin, free will versus predestination, a ton of different theological viewpoints, pre-rapture, post-rapture, I mean, is Jesus going to come before the rapture and save all the Christians, or is he going to come after the rapture? The Christians are gone, and then he's going to come back, and I mean, it's just a menagerie of theological crap that many thousands of people have been killed for. And I mean, we're talking like Christians killing Christians. It's some crazy shit. So, the thing that I realized was defending my point of view, which is kind of, I'm sorry, a long way around from in terms of shit that's my fault. One of the things that was my fault was defending my viewpoint, because I let the defense of my viewpoint be more valuable than the friendships that I had. So, it's a perfect example of how I can be a brother or sister, I can be have a brother or sister in the same faith, but strongly disagree with them to the point where there's like a big fight and I won't talk to them anymore. I see that in politics all the time. And so I just decided that I love peace too much. I love unity too much. I just can't do this anymore. And so, I got out of that business and got into a different business. So that's it. Some of the decisions that we make, making choices, defending your viewpoint. Another thing that's your fault is just pure selfishness. There are, I'm sure a lot of you that go, oh, well, I'm not selfish. Good for you. I was very, very selfish for a lot of my life, and I made a lot of decisions that hurt a lot of people because I was selfish. And I did things simply because my self-esteem was so low. I just figured that if there was some aspect of pleasure that I could get out of a situation, I was going to get it, because I might never have anything good happen to me after that. The problem was that sometimes the pleasure that I was going to have was married to my best friend. And that didn't always go. As a matter of fact, it never went well. And I tried it several times just to make sure. But there were things that I did in my life, and I'm certainly not proud of them at this point in time, but they were great. They were very important lessons that I learned. But sometimes we make choices out of just pure selfishness. And one of the, I talked about self-esteem earlier in terms of when we hit a place of self-sabotage and where we start to make bad decisions after making good decisions and getting what we want. When we realize that we are participating in acts of utter selfishness, this can be one of the most demoralizing realizations, because you realize that you just totally had nothing else in mind but your own well-being. And you did not look at what the cost or effect was of your actions. Don't go kill yourself, okay? It's not worth it. Nothing is. Just own it. The most important thing you can do is just own that you were utterly selfish and you made a bad decision. And then start choosing differently. Again, if we go back to establishing your core values, your core beliefs, your mission, your worldview, and your goals are not just things you want to do. It's things you want to do because whatever the reason is. And it's the because. Some people in the business community now, it's the big thing is know your why. And so now you can't know your why until you know your core values, because your core values determine what you do and the reason you do things. So this is a part that gets left out in a lot of that leadership training is the know why. But no one ever talks about core values. So the thing that we want to start doing in order to turn your life around is don't get all hung up on the bad decisions. Just own them, okay? I made some bad decisions. I fucked up. I did things that I shouldn't have done, and I'm going to do things different. Own it, acknowledge it, and then get your core values straight. What will keep you from doing it again? What will keep you from doing it again is living by your core values. looking at your core beliefs and your mission. And if you line up everything that you choose to do and every decision that you make with those core values and with that mission, guess what? You are going to fucking rock. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and I hope you come back for more. That's it. Have a great one.